Policy creates projects which enhance people's experience of this community. This is the general plan pyramid. Now, part of what we're doing tonight, as I mentioned earlier, is looking at social justice and racial equity. And why are we doing that? Well, if we only looked at a portion of the community vision, if we only looked at a segment of the community and asked them what they thought, we'd end up with only a partial community vision, which would result in a partial representation of that community vision in the general plan and so on and so forth, and ultimately end with projects that don't necessarily reflect equity, that don't necessarily reflect social justice, that were selected by only some of us and not all of us. Social justice and racial equity are important facets of the way that we're approaching this general plan update. And I want to take just a moment to recognize that racial equity is, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I just want to define it really quickly here for you so that we're all operating on the same, under the same framework. Racial equity is providing for policies that implement equitable outcomes for people of different races. And so regardless of the color of your skin, the policy provides for an equitable outcome. And you might be asking yourself, well, why is this important? When we approach general planning in the way that we're shown here, where we don't take into consideration how those are going to impact people of color, then we get disparate outcomes. The concepts of institutional racism or systemic racism have been around since the 60s. And it's really only in modern times, in recent years, that it's really gaining enough traction in the common vernacular that we can have these kinds of conversations about it. And I want to recognize and understand that not everybody is on the same page. I want to recognize and understand that not everybody has the vocabulary, and we're not expecting you to here tonight to. But I do want to make sure that as we're going into these conversations, we have a racial equity lens. And so if you're a person in this meeting who feels comfortable and confident asking the question, does this vision reflect equity? Does this vision reflect racial equity? Please speak up, bring that conversation to the group and make it known what your thoughts are about that. We don't have to have the solutions tonight, but we have to start the conversation. One of the concepts that I've been thinking about and how to explain why this is important to discuss, specifically about racial equity, for example, is that, it's like mathematics. Can you imagine trying to solve math problems without talking about numbers? You can't solve systemic racism without talking about race. So that's why we're doing it. I appreciate you working with us through this new territory that we're all exploring together. And again, back to Jen's point, let's be sensitive to one another and appreciative.